Welcome to Gambling with an Edge. And now, here are Bob and Richard.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Gambling with an Edge. My name is Bob Dancer.
And I'm Richard Munchkin.
Our guest today, whom we'll call Richie Rich, played his first hand of blackjack at Caesars in Atlantic City some 39 years ago, and he can still play there under his real name. Richie Rich, welcome to Gambling with an Edge.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I think we should clarify that you're playing with an edge. There's a lot of people who've been playing for 40 years who are not playing with an edge that can play everywhere.
Well, I wasn't playing with an edge in 1980.
Yeah.
But somewhere, the idea that he has an edge, he was runner-up at the 2015 Blackjack Ball, and the award you get is called the Munchkin Trophy, in honor of somebody, I can't remember who had won the first place 3 times and hence was forced to retire because he's too good for the competition. So Munchkin and Grosjean are the only ones who have been
backed off,
restricted that way. But Richie Rich won the trophy in 2015. So, Rich, clearly you've been gambling a long time. How'd you get started? And how long was it before you could fairly be described as an advantage player?
Well, I definitely know when I started gambling, that is. It was in 1980. I was 17 years old. You had to be 18 to gamble and drink in New Jersey.
I just figured out how old he is, folks. Math is a plaything for me. Go ahead.
57. My friend and I decided we'd take a ride down to Atlantic City. And so we drove down there. I had 2 cars at the time. I had I remember I'm in the car business. I remember everything by cars and dates and stuff like that. So I had BMW 2002, if anybody knows what that is. And I also had an old Volvo. They call it an Amazon. It's a 1965 Volvo. It was painted in primer. It was like a $50 or $100 car at the time. My other car was in the shop. So I'm driving this $100 Volvo down to Caesar's Palace. Or Caesar's Atlantic City.
Caesar's World, maybe.
Whatever they called it at the time. So, we get down there. Never played blackjack or anything like that before we go. And, I don't know how much money we had with us. Maybe, 50 or $100 each. And we were playing for red chips. And, well, the outcome of that. So, we went back to get our car. We had parked in valet. So we go back to valet to get the car, and there's no car. And we're waiting and waiting and waiting. And finally they came, "Hey, does somebody here have the Volvo?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do." And they're like, "Well, the key broke off in the ignition." And I knew that was a problem with those cars. They had brass keys back then. If you didn't put the key all the way in and you twisted it, it was going to break off. I said, "Hey, you have an extra key?" I said, "No, I don't have an extra key." They're like, "Oh, we're really, really sorry. We can comp you dinner and get you a limo home. And then we can either ship your car to you after we repair it, or we can send a limo back to your house, pick you up, and bring you down here to pick up your car."
So
how casinos have changed.
Red chip player.
Yeah, how casinos have changed.
No, they didn't even know whether I played or not. So the valet had screwed up my car. So they were trying to make accommodations. So that was my first comp. They sent us to the coffee shop. Back then, they had everything in the world on the menu, including lobster and filet mignon and wine and all this stuff. And, I have this piece of paper, and we asked the waitress, I said, "Well, how much is this worth?" And she said, "Well, you just order whatever you want." I'm like, "Wow, really?" We're ordering lobster tails and all this kind of stuff. And, of course, we have no money for a tip or anything like that because we already lost it all at blackjack.
That's the other thing. Back then, a comp was a comp. Right, like you said, you just ordered what you want. There wasn't a limit. There wasn't a dollar amount. They just would give you a comp.
Yeah, it was all, well, Yeah, on a comp, and then if you were RF&B, you were RF&B. Like not like RF&B as long as you play. I mean,
Right.
and you don't spend too much. It's RF&B, and if you overdid it, then they just next time you came, they just said, hey, you're not RF&B anymore.
Right.
So that was my first experience. So we went home, left in a $50 Volvo, came home in a stretch limo. Because my parents were pretty shocked when we pulled up.
I'll bet.
And
So when did you learn about counting cards and decide to learn?
well, that was quite a bit later, actually, a number of years later. I know Bob likes to have a little sex story involved. So
You're not going to let me down, are you?
no.
Good.
So, so the rest of that story is that.
I didn't realize there was more.
So I had the option of having them deliver my car to me on a flatbed, or having them come and pick me up in a stretch limo and take me to Atlantic City. Now, I lived in North Jersey, so that was at least 2 hour and 45-minute drive to Atlantic City. So this girl that I'd been trying to go out with, I said, hey, you want to go down Atlantic City in a limo? And she was like, okay. So anyway, that was a very, very good, meaningful experience.
In the back of the limo.
In the back of the limo going to Atlantic City. Then, of course, we had to come back in a $50 car that was smoking, but but then it didn't matter anymore. She never did go out with me again after that, though.
Did you think it was the car or what happened on the limo?
Maybe both.
All right. So when did you learn to count cards?
So when I was in college, I took another trip to Atlantic City, and I don't know, I had $500,000 with me. I started playing. Maybe I had $500. I started playing red chips. This is going to sound unbelievable, but it's true. Streaks, as you know, can be absolutely incredible.
Either way.
And I'm betting red chips. I have no idea how to play. None. I tried to double on a 20 because I thought you could just double your bet. I had no idea how to play this game. Couldn't lose. Well, I didn't double it. They didn't let me double the 20. They said, oh, you mean the split? And I was like, oh, well, no, I guess then don't double, they said. I said, oh, thank you. So, and then the next card was an ace, by the way. But anyway, they started paying me in green chips. I started betting the green chips. They started paying me in black chips. I started betting black chips. I couldn't lose. They're paying me in purple chips. I decided I'm going to move to the high limit room at a $500 minimum table now that I have these purple chips. I've got 5 suits in front of me. And they're talking, they're on the phone, they're doing everything. They don't know what to do. I'm betting purple chips. They're paying me in oranges. And I finally, if I lose 2, I'm playing 2 hands. I said, if I lose both hands,
I'm out of here.
I'm out of here. I couldn't do it. I was up about 20,000, and I decided, and I lost both hands, and I said, okay, I'm done. A host came up to me, who's actually still around. He's in the Bahamas now. Host came up to me, and what can I do for you? Blah, blah, blah. Let me know. We'll send a limo. We'll do this. We'll do that. So I went back home. I called him up. I said, I'm going to take half this money up there. Now, I went with 500 last time. I'm going to go with 10,000 this time. I'm in trouble. Of course, I lost the 10,000. So then I decided to go back, and I lost the other 10,000. And at that point, I walked over to the bookstore, kind of like a half of gambler bookstore and half of a peep show. And
don't bang the table.
Oh, sorry. And I bought. What was the first book I bought?
Stanford Wong, Humble.
No, the old book.
Ed Thorpe.
Yeah, Thorpe's book.
Beat the Dealer.
Beat the Dealer. I bought Beat the Dealer. I started reading that. And then I got interested in it. And then I started reading, pretty much everything that I could. mostly, Revere's book, the world's greatest blackjack book. And, I never took any, they didn't have any courses back then. You just read the book and tried it out. And, if you felt you were good enough, you were good enough. So I'd say it was probably about maybe 3 or 4 years into that, early to mid 80s.
So today, is it fair to call you an advantage gambler who works a little bit on the side, or somebody with a full-time job who plays advantageously periodically, somewhat as a hobby, but at an advantage?
I've never gambled, or at least said that I've gambled for a living. I've always had a business or a job or something of the sort. I never really had a bankroll. Everybody used to joke about, and you've actually talked about it, but everybody used to joke about, you have an infinite bankroll because you start with 10,000. I'm basically like a real gambler, right? I got 10,000 in my pocket, 20,000, whatever. I'll take a trip. If I lose it, I lose it. If I win, then, I win, except that I'm playing at an advantage.
Right.
So,
but if you lose the 20,000, the next
Then I'll
time
just
you
go
have
get another
another
20,000,
20,000.
yeah.
Right. So, yeah.
So, I never did it as a, business where I would say, okay, well, I have to, make this amount of money. This is my risk of ruin and all. I understand all that stuff. I'm not interested in doing it. I think I don't know. I would never want to do that for a living.
Okay. When you're playing, what kind of cover do you employ? How much do you think it cost you to do this, and how much do you think you gain from these cover plays?
Depends what you want to call cover, but let's say, one play that I've always liked to do, I don't know, I think I invented it, but maybe I didn't, is doubling on a hard 12.
For less or?
Well, obviously for less.
Okay.
It really makes no difference because there's certain plays that have to be called out to the pit, and they can't deal the card until the pit says okay.
Yeah.
Splitting tens, unless you've been doing it all night, then you don't say it anymore. But if a guy just walks up to a table and splits tens, they got to announce it. Well, I don't want anybody announcing I'm splitting tens. So, what do you want them to announce? Doubling a hard 12. Well, nobody's going to come investigate you for that, right? So if I got a $100 bet out and I'm going to hit the 12 anyway, then why not double for $5? It's the same announcement to the pit, and you look like a complete idiot to the guy in charge.
Yeah, the other benefit to that.
If it was in a position where, like against a 2 or 3, where you were only going to take one card only. If it was against a 7 or something, you wouldn't do that. Oh, no. Just, you don't do it that often. And you would only do it when you have a smaller bet out anyway, because if you had a larger bet out, likely you weren't going to hit that 12 against a 2, 3, or 4 anyhow.
Yeah, and
I like doing it against a 4 or even a 5 in a negative count.
Yeah, the other benefit to that is that the software they use to analyze players, at least the original versions, maybe it's changed now, but it has no distinction for doubling for less. So the software just marks you down as having doubled a 12, right? So, yeah, if you have a $300 bet and you double for $5, it's costing you nothing, and the software thinks you are, a total idiot.
Right.
I am so glad you mentioned this, Richie. Munchkin mentioned this to me a while ago, and I felt I can never write about this because he would kill me. I thought this was a state secret, and that I want him to be able to trust me with what he tells me. And now we're talking about it on the air, brought up by somebody else. I'm going, oh, this is so wonderful. Now I can write about it.
I mean, I have no idea if the software still works that way. I mean, that was 10 years ago or 15 years ago when it first came out. Maybe I would think they would have corrected those things by now.
I wasn't really so worried about the software or not. What I like is the announcement that has to be made, like for the whole pit to hear
Sure.
that there's an idiot at table, whatever, and he's doubling hard 12s, and after a while they're like, yeah, go ahead, whatever, and I would say that's probably better cover than pretty much anything else. Making the wrong plays in a high count. I mean, you certainly don't want to do that. You want to do the right thing.
Do you split tens?
I have. I don't do anything as a rule normally. I mean, some things as a rule, but I don't always play the same way. I play, with whatever I think that I can get away with or not get away with, which is probably why I can still play under my real name. Because if I'm using my real name, I try not to do anything that is going to get me thrown out.
Now, how is it possible that you're still playing under your real name when I know you've been backed off places?
Well, let me ask you this. Is being backed off count if you're backed off under a different name?
Oh, I see. So you used to play under a different name.
Or he has played at least some of the time.
Yeah.
So, all this stuff about IDs and stuff like that, as you know, it's all new or relatively new.
Right.
Back in the 80s, 90s, maybe even early 2000s, nobody asked for any ID.
Right.
If you walked into a casino,
You're Mr. R.
and
Something.
they say, do you have a card? I know, I've never been here before. Can I get a card? Sure. What's your name? They give you your name. They write down your address. That's your address. That's you. And, it was commonly known to casinos that not everybody gives their real name. Like, not just APs or bad guys or whatever, but just lots of guys that don't want to be known that they're in a casino gambling money.
Right, sure. But for like the last 15 years, you didn't have any backoffs or?
Well, I've had some backoffs, but I have not been backed off of Caesar's properties. I've been backed off of some properties that are owned by Caesars now, but weren't owned by Caesars when they backed me off, and it seems like I'm okay there now. Same thing with MGM to an extent, although I'm not quite sure about my status with MGM. Well, they seem to like me okay. I just don't put it in their face with blackjack. I can't play at a Boyd property. They really hate me. But
okay, so there are some places that you can't play, but some places where you're still.
I can
under
play
your real
pretty
name.
much now that everything's been bought out by everybody else. I can play pretty much anywhere on the Strip in Vegas, and I can, of course, Atlantic City can't really bar you, but they will take my action pretty well at least Caesars and Borgata and.
Well, Borgata
Hard
is
Rock
half
and
Boyd, or at least it was, wasn't it?
I don't know. Is it?
Wasn't Borgata halfway between MGM and Boyd?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Okay.
But obviously, you're not in the system there as being bad, so if you can still play there, so.
I mean, I've been backed off of blackjack in plenty of places under different names, and then gone back. Sometimes even under my real name. It's funny because I'd be in a database as, whatever my fake name was.
John Smith, yeah.
As that being my name, and then my alias. Sometimes they'd have my alias as my real name. So they really, that's good that they were that confused. I know in the Sands in Atlantic City, one time, it was pretty funny. I was sitting there playing blackjack under my real name. I don't know what made me use my real name. Just because I guess I had burnt out the other names that I had.
You couldn't think of any more aliases.
I'm sitting there playing under my real name, and I hear over the paging system. They're paging another name that I use of Steve something or other. Steve something or other. Dial extension 86.
Yeah. that might be a clue.
I'm thinking.
That used to be a long time back. That used to be a common tactic of Griffin agents here in town, where if they suspected it was you but they weren't sure, they would page you under your real name and see how you react. And yeah, I knew a number of guys who got thrown out that way because
they thought that was my real name. So then they came up to me. Suits came up to me and said, we know who you really are. You're so and so. And I was like, no, I'm not. And they're like, yes, we know who you are. And so I said, well, you want to see my ID? And they're like, no, we don't care. We know who you are. So they started, of course they can't tell you to leave, but they can pretty much be
but nowadays
worse in Atlantic City
things like throw you out for causing a disturbance, or they make up some other BS, to actually throw
filing
you out.
a false CTR.
Oh, yeah.
You heard about that?
No, I hadn't heard that one.
I was kind of putting it in their face in Taj Mahal one time, a long time ago. That's in the 90s. And, they were just getting furious because I was in there playing, and I, sit down at a table, and, they had to follow me around and stuff like that. And so I was like, I was getting audited from the IRS a while after that. And the auditor says to me, you ever buy chips in Atlantic City, New Jersey? And I'm thinking, well, yeah, I've played there before. And, there's this report that you purchased such and such number of chips on such and such a day. Is that true? And I was like, well, it's kind of true. I mean, I didn't just go and purchase them. I purchased some, and then I played, and then I cashed out, and then I decided, maybe I'll play a little bit more. And and then again, may have accumulated to be over $10,000. Okay. And that was the end of that. Because I didn't have tons of them or anything like that. So, but I never did anything like I made that up. I didn't really do that. I never, ever cashed out for more than $10,000 in a day. I know that for a fact. And they filed a CTR on me. I mean, it's pretty unbelievable that they would go to that extent.
Wesley Snipes.
Well,
how do you know him? And you got any stories you can share?
Well, I don't know Wesley Snipes personally. There's an AP that we call Wesley Snipes, and or we're going to call him that for the show anyway.
You might get a heads up between the time we tape this and the time it airs.
Well, the reason behind that is that obviously he's black, African. Well, he's black.
Mm-hmm.
He says black. He's old enough to be black and not African American, but he is an African American and excellent, talented AP, and
very successful.
And quite successful in both advantage play and other endeavors in his life. So one joke that we used to make all the time would be we'd be at a table with him, and once he would get up to go to the bathroom or whatever, we would say, "Hey, do you know who that is?" And be like, the dealers would normally say something like, yeah, he looks really familiar. I can't think of his name. And we're like, that's Wesley Snipes. Like, oh yeah. And then, people don't really know what people look like. If you tell somebody,
I one time was playing in Caesar's Palace, and he was at the table next to me, and I don't think he saw me come in. And his then girlfriend, I think maybe now his wife.
He doesn't have a wife now.
Oh, okay. Well, she
Nor
came
do
by. She came by my table and was looking at my table. And I turned around and I said to her, tell Wesley hello from me. And she looked at me kind of funny because I used his real name. And she went back over, and then he looked and we kind of acknowledged each other. But the dealer on my table said, is he a football player? And I said, yeah. And she said, yeah, I thought so.
Right.
So yeah, he gets
so then
mistaken.
to make it even more ridiculous, he actually looks somewhat like Wesley Snipes. I mean, a lot more than you or I do, certainly. But so one day,
just for our audience, no, you haven't seen any pictures of Munchkin, but he's not African American. Just in case you were wondering.
Yeah.
So I said the next time, instead of saying it was Wesley Snipes, we said, it's Denzel Washington. well, he looks nothing like Denzel Washington. But they believe that too. So it's amazing what people will believe as far as who you are or who you're not.
Do you have any encounters with, we'll call them, real celebrities?
Yeah. I've found myself sitting at tables with, with some celebrities over the years. I don't really notice people that much. It's usually somebody else that tells me, just like that. Like I was sitting next to Jack Nicholson, and I didn't even realize it. Until they
busy counting cards.
Yeah, well, until they came up and they said, "Excuse me, Mr. Nicholson, you have a phone call." And they, back then they constantly paging people. So if there was anybody famous in the casino, you kind of knew it. I sat next to John Bon Jovi. I sat next to John Daly, if you want to call him a celebrity.
Well, he'd be more fun to sit next to.
Oh, he definitely takes the, definitely takes the eye off of you.
Yeah, if one of those people was in the casino, I would want to be at the table across the pit or next door rather than on the same table they are.
Yeah, I didn't sit there intentionally. I just didn't even really, I was just saying that I just happened to be there. And of course, a lot of you see a lot of ball players and stuff like that in casinos, and I don't try to sit next to them, but sometimes you just find yourself there.
So are there any other things that you attribute your longevity and your ability to still play under your real name, other than, say, doubling 12? Are there any other techniques that you use to...
I don't think there's one or two. I think it's, it's a whole... it's like asking Thorpe, what does he attribute his excellent health in his old age? What do you do? Well, he probably does everything right. Exercise, diet, and this and that and the other thing. So and it's the same way, I think, that if you want to be an advantage player for 40 years, you can't do the same thing every single time and expect that nobody's going to notice. You have to be who you are. You have to be your act. If everybody says, "Oh, you have a great act," I don't have an act.
Yeah,
I don't have an act. It's me.
Right.
Oh,
yeah.
you're wearing you're wearing an expensive watch and you're smoking a cigar and you're doing this and that. I was like, well, I smoke cigars because I like cigars, and I wear an expensive watch because that's like my passion is I love nice watches, which I happen to share with a friend of ours who lives in London, who said one of the wisest things that I've heard ever, and I'll quote him, time is the most valuable commodity on earth.
Oh, yeah.
So wear a nice watch.
Oh. I was at lunch with him and one of his friends who I think you may know that lives in Los Angeles, or at least used to live in Los Angeles. And they were both wearing a watch that I forget the long name, but it's referred to as an AP, right? Which is sort of very apropos.
It's an Audemars Piguet.
Right.
Yes, it's an AP.
So they were both wearing these, and the guy in Los Angeles, his was newer. And so our friend said, "Oh, let me see your watch." And they traded watches, and, they put them on, and our friend said, "Oh, well, here, I'll just keep yours, and you keep mine." And he said, no, actually, yours is more expensive, even though his was newer. And he says, "Really? Mine was 46. And he goes, "Yeah, or his was 48, and the other guy's was 46,000, these watches." So, they're expensive watches.
For the record, my watch did not cost 46 or 48,000.
Right. I don't wear a watch, so.
Pit bosses and casino, especially pit bosses, are they are very into what our one other friend of ours likes to refer to as the trappings of wealth, and he doesn't like to wear anything that would be considered like that. And I always tell him, I said, if you're gonna be acting like you can afford to lose $50,000 playing blackjack, then, you probably shouldn't be wearing a $20 watch, because the guy that's maybe not the dealer, but the guy that's in charge, that it's a big deal for him to wear a $2,000 suit or a $40,000 watch or a $2,000 pair of shoes. Pit bosses are kind of like that. So, they notice stuff like that. People that notice stuff like that, people that know it, they notice it. And it's, I think, a really wise investment, much more so than the clothes or anything like that. If you buy a $2,000 suit, it's never going to be worth anything. You buy a $40,000 watch, it's probably going to be worth $50,000 one of these days. So you haven't really...
Well, the other thing is, you can look like an absolute homeless person, but if you're wearing a $20,000 watch, they're going to... It doesn't matter. You can wear anything you want,
right,
shirt with holes in it, if you got a $20,000 watch on or more or whatever.
Yeah. And not to mention the fact that a lot of APs, if they're successful, end up with a pile of cash sitting around. And why not have a watch instead of a pile of cash?
There are places that you can get fake Rolexes, for example. Many people can't tell the difference. Richie, you sneer as though you can tell the difference with a glance. Maybe you can. I couldn't. Does it fool most? So instead of 40,000 watch, you have a 500 or whatever it is for the fake. The
fakes are like 50. I went in the 80s. I picked up. There was a guy who used to, at the World Series of Poker, who used to set up a table full of fake watches at the World Series of Poker and sell jewelry there. And so I picked up a fake Piaget, and I walked in, and my roommate said, "Oh, where'd you get the fake watch?" Like instantly. And I said, how did you know it was fake? She goes, I know you can't afford the real one.
There's that. Okay. So
Well, if you get a gold watch, you're never going to make a fake one the right color.
Right. That's what she said. If you're going to get a fake watch,
Get a stainless.
Yeah.
Get a stainless steel watch. They do make some fakes out of solid gold. But obviously they're expensive if they're solid gold. They're not as expensive as the real one. But, why are you going to pay $5,000 for a fake watch that's gold? And that's worth not even half of that in the future when you can just go pay $20,000 and get the real deal and, not have to make apologies for it. And someday it'll be worth more than that, more than likely, if you buy the right watch.
So you're obviously a watch collector that looks at them as investments.
Yeah. I mean, somewhat of an investment and somewhat of a
status symbol.
I don't really look at it as so much as a status symbol, but if you want to look at it that way, you should, getting back to the original point, somehow or another, you should look and act like you're supposed to be there. You have a reason to be there.
Yeah.
What reason is there for some people to be in a casino for 10 hours in Iowa or something like that? You have to have a reason to be there. So I don't have any reason to be there, so I don't go. I wouldn't go to Iowa and, try to, make a case for, what's this guy doing here betting all this money? Is he local? Is he this? Or is he that? I mean, who is he? I want to know. It's not that many people don't just stumble into a casino and start betting a lot of money.
Yeah, but it's pretty easy to come up with a credible story. I mean, when I was in Iowa, my story was I was there developing some real estate.
Yeah, but just like in the rest of life, if you continually live a lie, you're going to get caught at it. I mean, just last night, I was a pit boss asked me, where are you from? And I told him where I lived. And he's like, I used to live right around the corner from there. And, then we started talking about local restaurants and, this and that and the other thing. And I'm like, it's a good thing I was telling the truth, because if I didn't, I would have been caught immediately. So, unless you're telling the truth, at gambling or, some friends of ours have that problem with dating women on Bumble and whatnot, is they just don't have the right story. They don't want to tell them what they really do. And if they make something else up, eventually it starts to look a little bit shady.
All right, we're going to take a brief commercial break. When we come back, we're going to hear about a hooker at a bar during Frank Sinatra's last concert. So that sounds like that's a story that I'm really interested in hearing. The South Point has more than 10,000 games, returning more than 99%. This is more than anyone else has. In October, the promotion is free play with a kicker. Usually free play is eligible to be picked up Tuesday through Thursday, weekly. In October, your normal free play may be picked up Monday through Wednesday, and if you pick that up, you get the same amount either Friday or Saturday of the same week. Do this 4 weeks in a row, meaning 8 free play pickups, and you get double-sized free play pickup on Monday, October 28th. The October 22nd free video poker class at the South Point will be NSU Deuces Wild. This is a 99.7 plus game, which with a 0.3 cash club is even money off the top. They do have free play they offer. They do have promotions. So you are playing with a very small edge. Every Deuces Wild game has its own idiosyncrasies. You will learn in the class how variations in the amount you get for the full house changes your strategy significantly, and the amount you get for the flush changes your play significantly. We've recently started talking about predictit.org. This is a betting market where you can place a bet on what is going to happen politically, mostly in the United States, but in other places as well. We are taping this a couple weeks before it airs. We have no idea what the odds will be for example, there's various things about impeachment. There's various things about which Democratic candidate, who the Democratic candidate will be, and various other things that will change between now and then. You can buy a position, you can sell it at any point along the way. So if there's a nice run-up, you can capture that.
Right, you can trade in and out just like any commodities future contract. So all contracts are $1. So say, for example, currently the contract for will Trump be impeached by the end of the year, the no is at 60 cents and the yes at 40 cents. So at the end, when the contract is resolved, whoever has the winning side will get $1. And you can have up to $850 in a position on any one contract.
Well, if those are the odds, I'll take the no.
Yeah. Well, as I say, you can bet on anything, and they move. And so you don't have to wait till the actual event. You can sell the contract whenever you want at whatever the current price is. So.
And we live in a divided country where people who get their news from Fox are going to have a very different position as to the people who get their news at, say, MSNBC. So there's lively markets in all of these. And the fact that Richard said the current market is, we're taping this a full 2 weeks before it airs. So whatever the price is when it airs may or may not be the 60-40 that Richard just quoted.
Right. Could be vastly different.
So there's a promo. If you sign up with this through the promo of predictit.org/promo/edge, what benefits do they get, Richard?
So yeah, you get a $20 matching bonus. You deposit $20, they give you a $20 bonus. You have to bet it through at least one time, and you have to wait 30 days before cashing it out. So
it's a small benefit, but if this is something that sounds interesting to you, I have my own political beliefs. I believe I can make money in this market, albeit small amounts. It does sound like fun.
Yeah.
All right. At videopoker.com, it's the best place to play lots of games. If you sign up for the gold membership, $8.95 a month or $79.95 a year, this allows you to get correction on most of the games. In the very near future, they will have a pro membership with an additional benefits at a different cost. And we're going to be talking about this soon. We will be interviewing in the near future an employee from videopoker.com who will explain the benefits of that. The game of the week is Super Times Pay Spin Poker. Spin Poker is a 9-line per line game, so you're betting 45 coins. Super Times Pay is a 6-coin per line game, so you'll be betting 54 lines, 54 coins per spin. You'll be paid on the basis of 45 coins, except approximately 1 out of 15 hands you get a multiplier that applies to whatever you get. The multipliers will range between 2x and 10x. In general, they add approximately 0.25% to the return on the game with no change in the strategy. All right, we're back to Richie Rich. You were in Atlantic City during the time of Frank Sinatra's last concert, and something happened.
I think you.
Did I spoil this punchline?
Well, I think that you over anticipated how great of a story that was. It was just some notes that I wrote down. But to answer your question, I'm not sure if it was his last concert, but it was one of his last concerts, and it was in a small venue. And I love Frank Sinatra anyway, but that was a very memorable thing that I got to do, to see him in a very small cabaret kind of setting at the Golden Nugget, and shake his hand and tell him how much I enjoyed his music over the years, but the other part on the line was just an example of how naive I was when I started playing blackjack. I guess I was maybe 19 or 20 years old when I was at about 2 o'clock in the morning. I went to was getting ready to go to bed, and I said, "Oh, maybe I'll stop by. I'll have a drink at the bar before I go to bed." So I stopped at the corner bar inside the casino and the Golden Nugget, and this young lady started chatting me up. And she's asked me where I was from, and, I thought this girl liked me. And, she says, well, where do you, I was like, well, what do you do? And she's like, well, I'm a working girl. And I said, well, that's great. Where do you work? And she's like, oh my God, where did this guy go? Fell off a turnip truck somewhere, right? He says, I'm a working girl. And, I was like, oh.
I was dealing to a girl one time. And, when I was dealing, I was 22, 23 years old. And she came in all dressed up, really nice looking. And so I'm dealing to her. And I was like, so what do you do? And she just looked at me like I was an idiot. And she said, I'm a lady of the evening.
So you decided it was time to dummy up and deal?
Actually, no, I had a million questions then, but...
All right, so...
It was kind of like a podcast. I used to interview people while I dealt to them.
That might be why you're so good at this. Have you been to any grand openings, and is it general? How does that work for you?
I haven't been to very many lately, although I did go to the grand opening of Hard Rock in Atlantic City, and it was surprisingly reminiscent of the grand openings of like the Mirage or Bellagio or any of those things that were, I guess, back in the 90s. But typically, every AP went to pretty much every grand opening back then. I don't know if you remember the grand opening of the Bellagio. I'm not sure if you came. That was back in the day of that BJ21.
Yeah, I was not there for that opening.
I was.
Yeah, but you weren't invited. Because I had a party at the Bellagio in the penthouse suite catered by the Bellagio opening weekend for everybody that was in that group, and Tommy was there, and Wesley was there, and quite a number of other.
I always
APs.
love it actually when the casino hosts a party for APs without realizing it. Our friend from London one time decided to throw this huge barbecue in Sunset Park. This was in the 90s, in the heyday of the MGM. And he got the MGM to cater the party and bring out steaks and ribs and everything to Sunset Park for a bunch of advantage players.
Well, actually, back in the day, the MGM, I mean, that was just unbelievable, what was going on at the MGM.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what other people had other stuff going on. I had a pit boss or a floor person that would write down my highest bet as my average bet and would basically keep me on the card for her whole shift, even if I was taking a nap or eating or whatever. So I got, when she worked 8 hours, I got 8 hours. If my max bet was 2 hands of 1,500, then I had 8 hours of play at a $3,000 average bet.
I one time during the heyday of the MGM, this is late 90s we're talking about, when we used to get Tyson tickets and stuff. I came down to collect my airfare on Sunday morning, which was, the normal thing, right, to get cash airfare. So I come down on Sunday morning, and the girl behind the counter says, "Don't you ever sleep?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "Well, you came in Friday and you've got 33 hours of play."
Right.
So, yeah, it was pretty crazy back then.
But that's the thing about, you're asking, well, how can you last that long? Well, whatever presents itself, you should take advantage of. So you're presented with a floor person that likes you and wants to give you a high rating, and in return, I'd give her. I don't think I ever actually bought her anything. I would give her a bottle of liquor from the room, or favorite kind of liquor, or something. They would give you these crystal things or whatever, and probably baccarat crystal or whatever, things that I wouldn't even know what to do with. I'd give those things to her, and she thought it was great, and she was just writing me down for that. And if you think about how much money that's worth so much more money.
Oh God.
Than whether or not you split tens, or whether or not you get an extra, whether you bet $800 or $1,000 on a hand. It really doesn't. At that point, it doesn't matter.
Right. I mean,
I just got $10,000 worth of Tyson tickets.
Right. Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And I get airfare, and I get this and that. As long as I don't lose at the game, it's okay.
Yeah, right. You can play a break-even game at that point. Well, you could even play with a slight negative. If they're giving you $10,000 worth of Tyson tickets, which they were,
right?
I never went to one of the fights. I always sold the tickets.
Yeah, me too.
And airfare. To get thrown out for counting cards at that point would just be insanity.
Right. And, there's stuff like that going on all over the place. And,
more than just blackjack.
Yes.
In my $1 Million Video Poker, I discussed the same era at the MGM where they were just loading it onto video poker players. And a lot of the $1 million I earned had to do with casino generosity and casino mistakes. So it can happen in any game. And you mentioned the beginner, when grand openings, a lot of places, they don't know the rules yet. The people in positions were an assistant before, and now they think they can do the job, and they don't really know how to handle the situation. There are a lot of cases in video poker where the games are inappropriately loose or inappropriately generous with the Theo, or inappropriately this or that. The promotions are too generous. Until the casino finds out what they're doing, they're giving away the store. And they do it in the first weekend.
Yeah, for me, my current feelings about grand openings are, so many of these places now are looking for advantage players on opening day, because they know they used to always get inundated. So, I think go to a grand opening and try the video poker. But if you're a table games player, I would wait at least a week. Because I know one grand opening.
Well, if you think they're looking for you in particular because you're in the database or whatever, there's a good chance they'll pick you off.
Oh,
but if you think that they're looking for your actions, then sometimes your actions aren't really even that significant. Because what I think you're looking for in a grand opening is a lot of errors. A sloppy dealer, however you feel that you can take advantage of it. My eyesight is really bad. I can't see whole cards, but somebody that could, obviously, the chances of finding a sloppy dealer are much greater.
Yeah, but the problem is, for example, when Maryland opened, they went around and looked at every guy sitting on third base on every Carnival game and went and compared them to the database, and they threw a bunch of people out before they even opened the games, right? Just by looking at third base on carnival
Well,
games.
they don't like me there. I didn't last very long at Maryland.
A lot of people did not last long there. But anyway, that's why I say if you're a table games player, I think it's better to wait a few days or a week to let the games cool off a bit before.
Well, as you said, video poker. I used to work for a guy that in the car business, and he loved to play video poker. And I kept trying to tell him, because I kept trying to tell him that you're playing a losing game. You're playing a losing game. And he's like, I understand that you're telling me that. He's like, but I've been doing it for years, and I'm ahead of the game. I'm telling you, I'm ahead. And I thought that he was just a compulsive gambler, and that he just loved to go out there and he would make up that he really was ahead, or he was extremely lucky. And actually, it was none of the above. He was playing at the Mirage, and they would just give him so much to play the game. And he played like 9-6 jacks or something, and he had the card, that showed him what to do. He probably didn't play perfectly, but he played okay. Yep. And that with all the comps and the free play and everything else, he was actually playing at an edge, probably a greater edge than I was playing at when I was counting cards.
A significant edge that in the 90s, where they had a .67 club, and you could get RFB, unlimited RFB, for like 20,000 coin in a day.
Wow.
The game started out at 99.54, and they had monthly promotions, where they'd give away $400,000 to the invited guests, and you would play to earn tickets. So it was a nice time to play. We're going to have to cut Richie Rich off right now. We're nearing the end of the hour, and Munchkin and I have instituted a program called Recommended, where we each talk about something that we've come across in the last bit that we want to share with our listeners. So I have something.
Why don't you go first?
Okay. And I can take up to the end of it if you don't have anything off the tip of your hands. A week ago, my wife Bonnie and I went to a funeral memorial service for a lady in square dancing. And the way the square dancing community works in Las Vegas is, if it's somebody who's been square dancing and is liked, and they've been there for a long time, you get like 80 people who show up for the memorial service. Well, the minister who was running the memorial service didn't know the lady, which isn't that rare, and for whatever reason wasn't given enough information to work with. He did not know. He had very few stories about the lady. The family did not give him enough information. So what Bonnie and I decided is we're going to write our own memorial service now. When we're both in our 70s, I'm in better health than she is, but you never know how these things go. So if Bonnie died now, well, I'm willing and able to lead at least the secular part of the memorial service myself. I don't know when she's going to go. I could easily be dead or have a stroke between now and then, or whatever, incapacitated. So I have to write the notes for her so that they're going to be given by somebody other than myself. And for me, if Bonnie's not capable of leading my service, but I have friends who are, including Munchkin and my brother, and the various other people in other places who could, who are very competent in leading it, and especially if they had some notes to work with of, this is an interesting story and this is an interesting story, and they'll edit it as they will, but they'll have something to work with. So all of us, our time's going to come someday, so you may want to consider getting ready for it.
All right. Mine is, there's a musical opening end of October, so obviously I haven't seen this yet, but I'm recommending it anyway. It's called Lizzie, and it's a rock musical about Lizzie Borden, the axe murderer. And I'm recommending it because it's a brand new theater owned by a group called Poor Richard's Players, and these guys have been around for quite a long time. I think 10 years. They do really quality work. So I'm looking forward to seeing that show. So it's called Lizzie the Musical. You can just Google it. And the theater is brand new. They'll be opening in a couple of... actually, it's right around the time this will be airing. So, you can just Google it. And that's my recommendation for this week.
When you recently were a key member of the Noises Off cast, was that run by Poor Richard's Players?
Yeah. The two directors were two of the leaders of that group.
That was one funny show, nicely presented. So I'm guessing the Lizzie will be one funny show, nicely presented.
I don't know that it'll be funny being about Lizzie Borden, but yeah, I'm sure it'll be a quality
musical.
Piece. Yeah.
It's a musical. Yeah, I'm guessing it's going to be a Tom Lehrer-ish, but we'll see. Thank you, Richie Rich. Thank you, Richard Munchkin. Go out and hit lots of royal flushes, everybody. Good day.